The Kelthran science ship Luminous Hope floated helplessly in the dark emptiness of space. Inside the vessel, Captain Mira ran her scaled fingers along the control panel, watching the red warning lights blink like angry eyes. The ship was dying and she knew it. "Captain, we have another power failure," called out Ben, her human communications officer. His voice was tight with worry. "The main engine is completely dead. Life support is down to 28%. Mira closed her eyes and took a deep breath of the thinning air. Her crew of 30 scientists and researchers looked at her with fear in their eyes. They were explorers, not fighters. Their ship was built for studying distant stars and strange space phenomena, not for surviving disasters like this. "How long do we have?" she asked quietly. Dr. Kate Mills, the ship's medical officer, checked her readings. "Maybe 5 hours before the air becomes too poisonous to breathe. 6 hours at the most." The bridge fell silent except for the grinding sounds of failing machinery. Through the main window, Mira could see the stars scattered across the black void. Beautiful and cold and completely indifferent to their fate. "What about the emergency beacon?" asked Tom, the young engineer. His hands shook as he worked at his station. "Someone will hear it, right? The Council has rescue ships." Mira wanted to give him hope, but she knew the truth. They were in the void sector, the dangerous empty space between the civilized star systems. Council rescue ships avoided this area. It was too risky, too far from help. Pirates and raiders hunted here like wolves in a dark forest. "The nearest Council station is 47 light-years away," Ben reported. "Even if they send a ship immediately, it would take them 3 days to reach us." 3 days. They had 5 hours. "Captain," said Dr. Mills softly, "there might be another option." Every head on the bridge turned toward her. Mira saw something in the doctor's eyes that made her nervous. "The restricted channels," Dr. Mills continued. "The ones that reached the quarantine systems." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Everyone knew what she meant. The Sol system. Home to the humans who had been quietly isolated by the Galactic Council for over 200 years. "The Deathworlders," whispered Tom, his young face pale with fear. Mira had heard the stories like every child in Council space. Humans were violent beyond imagination. They came from a world so dangerous that most species would die within hours of landing there. They fought wars that lasted decades. They built weapons that could destroy entire planets. They were so aggressive that the Council had decided it was safer to pretend they didn't exist. "They probably wouldn't even answer," Ben said quickly. "And if they did?" "Captain, the stories about them?" "I know the stories," Mira replied. She looked around at her crew. These were good people. Scientists and doctors and engineers who had spent their lives trying to understand the universe and make it better. They didn't deserve to die out here in the cold darkness. But did she have the right to contact the humans? What if the stories were true? What if asking for help from Deathworlders was worse than dying? Another power conduit exploded somewhere deep in the ship. The lights flickered and dimmed. The air recycling system made a grinding noise and went quiet. 4.5 hours, Dr. Mills said quietly. Mira stood up slowly. Through the window, she could see her reflection in the glass, a middle-aged Kelthran with blue-green scales and large dark eyes. She had been exploring space for 20 years. She had seen wonders that most people could only dream of. She had dedicated her life to peaceful discovery. Now she had to make a choice that went against everything she had been taught. "Ben," she said finally, "open all emergency channels. All of them." "Captain, are you sure? If we contact the humans and they actually respond?" "If we don't contact them, we die anyway," Mira said. "At least this way we try everything." Ben's hands moved over his controls with practiced skill. "Emergency channels open, Captain. Broadcasting on all frequencies, including the restricted ones." "This is Captain Mira of the Kelthran research vessel Luminous Hope," she said into the microphone. Her voice was steady despite the fear in her heart. "We are experiencing critical system failures in the void sector. Our life support is failing. We have 30 crew members aboard. We request immediate assistance from any vessel able to respond." The message pulsed out into space at the speed of light, carrying their desperate plea into the darkness. It would reach the nearby star systems in minutes. It would reach Earth in an hour. Now all they could do was wait and hope that anyone was listening. "Message sent," Ben reported. "Now we wait." Mira sat back down in her captain's chair and watched the stars. Somewhere out there in the vast emptiness, their call for help was racing through space. Maybe a council ship would hear it and risk the journey. Maybe pirates would find them first and end their suffering quickly. Or maybe something else entirely would answer their call. something that the civilized galaxy preferred to forget existed. The air grew thinner as the life support systems continued to fail. Time was running out, and all they could do was wait in the growing darkness and wonder what kind of help might be coming for them. 3 hours had passed since they sent the distress call. The air inside the luminous Hope was getting thicker and harder to breathe. Captain Mira watched her crew work at their stations, but she could see the exhaustion in their movements. Dr. Mills had started giving oxygen masks to the crew members who were struggling the most. Any response to our signal? Mira asked Ben, though she already knew the answer from his worried expression. Nothing from the Council ships, he replied. But Captain, I'm picking up something on the long-range sensors. Something big. Mira felt her heart skip a beat. Show me. The main screen flickered to life, displaying the sensor readings. A massive object was approaching their position, moving fast through hyperspace. Much faster than any Council rescue ship could travel. That's huge, whispered Tom from his engineering station. 3 times bigger than our ship, maybe 4 times. Could be a cargo hauler, suggested Dr. Mills hopefully. Some of the mining companies have big ships that work in the outer sectors. But even as she said it, Mira could see the doubt in the doctor's eyes. The sensor readings showed more than just size. The approaching vessel had thick armor plating and what looked like weapon systems. Lots of weapon systems. The proximity alarms started screaming as the unknown ship dropped out of hyperspace. Through the main window they could see it clearly now. It was enormous and painted dark gray, almost black. Gun turrets the size of small buildings rotated slowly along its hull. Energy shields shimmered around it like heat waves. By all the stars, Ben breathed. That's not a rescue ship. That's a warship. The communication system crackled to life with a rough, unfamiliar voice speaking heavily accented Galactic Standard. The words were clear but pronounced in a way that made them sound harsh and dangerous. Kelthran vessel Luminous Hope, this is Captain James Walker of the Earth ship Ragnarok. We received your distress call. Please prepare for immediate assistance. The bridge fell completely silent. Even the failing life support system seemed to quiet down. Everyone stared at the communication panel as if it might explode. Earth ship. Human ship. Did he say Earth? Tom asked in a small voice. The Deathworlders actually answered, Dr. Mills whispered. They came. Mira forced herself to stay calm, though her hands were shaking. She had asked for help and help had arrived. The fact that it came from humanity's most feared warriors was something she would have to deal with. This is Captain Mira, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. We are grateful for your response, Captain Walker. We have 30 crew members aboard and our life support systems are failing. We need medical evacuation and dash. Captain Mira, the human interrupted, his voice suddenly sharp and urgent. My sensors show your ship has been deliberately damaged. This wasn't an accident or system failure. Someone sabotaged your vessel. Sabotaged? But that's impossible. We're just researchers dash. And I'm reading multiple contacts moving toward your position, Walker continued. Small ships running silent. They've been waiting for you to die so they can board and strip your ship. As if his words had summoned them, red warning lights began flashing on the sensor display. Dozens of small ships were decloaking around them, emerging from stealth like sharks rising from dark water. Pirates, Ben said, his voice hollow with fear. Hegemony raiders. They disabled us so they could take everything including us. The raider ships moved into attack formation around the helpless Luminous Hope. Their weapons powered up, ready to finish what they had started. But they seemed confused by the presence of the massive human warship. A new voice came over the communication channel, harsh and mocking. Human vessel, you are interfering with a legitimate salvage operation. Depart immediately or face the consequences. Captain Walker's response was calm and almost cheerful. This is the UES Ragnarok to all raider vessels. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and withdraw from this area. This is your only warning. The raider commander laughed, a sound like breaking glass. One human ship against 20 of ours? Even Deathworlders aren't that stupid. Last chance, human. Leave now or we'll add your wreckage to our prize. Through the main window, Mira could see the weapon turrets on the Ragnarok beginning to move. They turned with mechanical precision, targeting the raider ships with movements that seemed almost graceful. The human ship didn't look afraid or uncertain. It looked ready. 30 seconds are up, Walker said, his voice still calm. All crew battle stations. Weapons free. Let's clean up this mess. Captain, Dr. Mills grabbed Myra's arm. What have we done? We called for help and started a war. But Mira was watching the sensor display with growing amazement. The human ship wasn't just preparing to fight 20 raiders, it was positioning itself between them and the Luminous Hope. Despite being outnumbered, despite the danger, the humans had placed themselves in harm's way to protect a ship full of strangers. "No," she said quietly, understanding flooding through her. "We didn't start a war. We found protectors." The first shots rang out across the darkness of space as the battle began. But for the first time since their engines failed, Captain Mira felt something she hadn't dared to hope for. They might actually survive this. The Deathworlders had come to save them, and heaven help anyone who tried to stop them. The first volley from the raider ships lit up space with bright plasma fire. 20 ships firing at once created a light show that hurt to look at directly. But Captain Mira watched in amazement as none of the shots hit their target. The massive human warship moved like a dancer, spinning and turning with impossible grace for something so huge. "How is something that big moving so fast?" Tom asked from his engineering station, his voice filled with wonder and fear. Through the communication system, they could hear Captain Walker's voice, calm and steady as if he was discussing the weather. "Emma, bring us about 15 degrees starboard. Alex, I need power to the forward shields." "Nice and easy, people." The Ragnarok completed its turn and suddenly the space around it erupted with return fire. But this wasn't the wild shooting of the raiders. Every shot from the human ship was precise, calculated, deadly. Weapons that Mira had never seen before carved through the raider formation like a hot knife through ice. "What kind of weapons are those?" Dr. Mills asked, staring at the sensor readings. "The energy output is impossible." "Kinetic accelerators," Ben said quietly, reading from his station. "Particle beams. And something called Hellfire missiles. I've never heard of any of these weapon types." 2 raider ships exploded in brilliant fireballs as the human weapons found their targets. But instead of celebrating, the crew of the Ragnarok continued working with professional calm. "Tom, clean up those 3 on the port side," Walker's voice came over the open channel. "Jane, can you get me a firing solution on their command ship? And someone see if you can jam their communications. I'm tired of listening to their whining." The human crew worked together like parts of a single machine. Their voices were relaxed, almost casual, as they coordinated the destruction of an entire pirate fleet. It was the most terrifying and beautiful thing Mira had ever witnessed. A group of raiders tried to flank the human ship, coming at it from 3 different directions. But the Ragnarok was ready for them. Point defense systems that looked like metal flowers bloomed along its hull, spitting streams of energy that turned incoming missiles into clouds of glowing dust. "Multiple contacts bearing 270, reported a female voice from the human ship. "Looks like they're trying to be clever." "Let them come," Walker replied. "Alex, give them something to remember us by." A section of the Ragnarok's hull opened like a mouth, revealing a weapon that made Myra's blood run cold. It was larger than her entire ship, a cannon that belonged on a planetary defense platform, not a mobile vessel. When it fired, the beam was so bright that the Luminous Hope's windows automatically darkened to protect their eyes. The beam passed through 3 raider ships in a straight line, vaporizing them completely. Not even debris remained. "Sweet mother of stars," whispered Tom. They just deleted them." But the human ship wasn't finished. It moved through the raider formation like a predator among prey, its weapons speaking with mechanical precision. Every shot counted. Every movement had purpose. In less than 10 minutes, 16 raider vessels had been reduced to expanding clouds of superheated gas and metal fragments. The few surviving raiders broke formation and tried to escape, but the humans pursued them with relentless efficiency. Not out of anger or bloodlust, but with the same professional focus they had shown throughout the battle. "Runner at Mark 44, called out the female voice. "He's trying to reach the jump point." "Not today he isn't," Walker replied. "Emma, show him why running from humans is a bad idea." Another weapon fired from the Ragnarok, this one smaller but incredibly fast. The fleeing raider ship exploded just as it reached the edge of sensor range. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the battle was over. Space was filled with debris and radiation, but no living raider ships remained. The human warship hung motionless among the wreckage, its weapons powering down with mechanical precision. "Threat neutralized," Captain Walker's voice returned to its earlier helpful tone. "All raider vessels destroyed or disabled. Beginning rescue operations now." Mira realized she had been holding her breath through most of the battle. Around her, the crew of the Luminous Hope stared at their sensors in shocked silence. They had just watched a single human ship destroy an entire pirate fleet without taking any damage. "Captain," Ben said quietly, "they're moving toward us." The massive human warship approached slowly, its weapon turrets rotating away from them in what was clearly a peaceful gesture. Through the window, Mira could see details of its hull scars from previous battles, armor plating that looked thick enough to stop asteroids, and weapon systems that violated at least 6 different galactic warfare treaties. Keltheran vessel, Walker's voice came over the communication system. We're going to dock with you and evacuate your crew. Our medical bay is equipped for multiple species. You'll be safe aboard the Ragnarok. Safe aboard a human warship. The irony wasn't lost on Mira. The most dangerous military vessel she had ever seen was now their sanctuary. Dr. Mills, she said quietly, prepare the crew for evacuation. And Doctor? When we get aboard their ship, remember that these people just saved our lives. Even if they're Deathworlders? The doctor asked. Mira watched the human ship maneuver alongside them with gentle precision, the same hands that had just delivered death with surgical accuracy now preparing to preserve life. Especially because they're Deathworlders, she replied. I think we've been wrong about what that word really means. The docking bay of the Ragnarok was enormous, easily large enough to fit 3 ships the size of the Luminous Hope. As Captain Mira and her crew stepped through the airlock, they found themselves in a space that told the story of countless battles. The metal walls were scarred and patched, weapon racks lined the corridors, and the air smelled of oil and something sharp that might have been gunpowder. But what surprised Mira most was how clean everything was. Despite the battle damage, every surface gleamed. Every tool was in its proper place. This wasn't the chaotic war machine she had expected, but a well-organized home for professional soldiers. Welcome aboard, said a woman in a blue uniform, stepping forward with a warm smile. She was tall and strong, looking like all humans, but her hands were gentle as she helped an injured Keltheran crew member. I'm Dr. Helen Cooper, Chief Medical Officer. Let's get you all checked out. The medical bay was a revelation. It looked like something from the most advanced hospitals in Council space, but better. The diagnostic equipment was more sophisticated than anything Mira had ever seen. Treatment pods were configured for dozens of different species. The air recycling systems were so advanced they could create breathable atmosphere for any known life form. How is this possible? Dr. Mills whispered as she watched human medical staff move among the injured Keltherans with expert care. This technology is years ahead of anything we have. Dr. Cooper overheard her and smiled. When you might have to treat wounded allies from 50 different species in the middle of a battle, you learn to build the best medical equipment possible. Can't save lives with second-rate gear. Young Tom was sitting in a treatment pod, breathing clean oxygen for the first time in hours. The color was returning to his face as the machine filtered toxins from his blood. Dr. Cooper, he said hesitantly, why do you have medical equipment for so many species? I thought humans stayed in their own space. The doctor paused in her work, choosing her words carefully. We stay out of council politics, that's true. But people are people no matter what species they are. When someone needs help, we help. Captain Walker appeared in the medical bay doorway. Up close, Mira could see he was older than she had expected, with gray hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent in dangerous places. His uniform was simple and practical, not decorated with the medals and ribbons she associated with military officers. How are my passengers doing, Doc? He asked. They'll all be fine, Dr. Cooper replied. A few hours of treatment and they'll be good as new. Though I have to ask, Captain Mira, what were you doing in the void sector without an escort? Mira felt embarrassed by the question. We're researchers. We study cosmic radiation patterns. Our computer models showed the void sector was safe for civilian ships. Walker's expression darkened. Your models were wrong. The hegemony raiders have been using this area as a hunting ground for months. They disable civilian ships, wait for the crews to die, then strip everything valuable. But why? Asked Dr. Mills. We're just scientists. We don't carry weapons or valuable cargo. Your research data alone is worth millions on the black market, Walker explained. Plus, Keltherans make good slaves in certain parts of the galaxy. The raiders would have sold your crew to the highest bidder. The medical bay fell silent as the implications sank in. Without the human intervention, they wouldn't have just died, they would have been captured and sold. I don't understand, Mira said quietly. Your ship, your weapons, you could conquer entire star systems with that kind of firepower. Why use it to rescue strangers? Walker sat down on a medical crate, suddenly looking tired. Because someone has to. The Council sends rescue ships, sure, but they take weeks to arrive and can't defend themselves when they get there. By the time they reach a distress call in the outer sectors, there's usually nothing left to rescue. He gestured around the medical bay, where human staff continued caring for the Kelthran crew with professional skill. Ships like mine patrol the dangerous areas where Council vessels won't go. When we get a distress call, we don't send aid. We send the means to make sure aid can be delivered safely. Tom looked up from his treatment pod. But the stories about humans, they say you're too violent for civilized space. Walker chuckled, but there was no humor in it. We are violent. More violent than any other species in Council space. But violence isn't evil if it's used to protect innocent people. The quarantine, Mira said suddenly, understanding beginning to dawn. It wasn't imposed on humanity by the Council. You chose it. Smart, Walker nodded approvingly. Yes, we chose isolation. Because the alternative was worse. I don't understand. Walker stood up and walked to the medical bay window. Through it, they could see the debris field where the Raider fleet had been destroyed. What happens when peaceful species become dependent on violent ones for protection? They stop being peaceful themselves. They start expecting others to fight their battles. Eventually, the protectors become rulers whether they want to or not. Dr. Cooper finished treating the last patient and joined the conversation. So we stay out of Council space. We don't interfere with your politics or your wars. But when civilians need help in places where help doesn't usually come, you're there, Mira finished. We're there, Walker confirmed. It's not a perfect solution, but it works. The Council races stay peaceful and independent. We stay out of their way. And people like you get to go home to their families instead of ending up in slave markets. As Mira looked around the medical bay at her crew alive, safe, and receiving the best care possible, she began to understand what the word Deathworlder really meant. It wasn't about being too dangerous for civilization. It was about being dangerous enough to protect it. 2 days later, the Ragnarok escorted the repaired Luminous Hope toward the edge of Council space. Captain Mira stood in the human ship's observation lounge, watching the stars through the massive window. The view was beautiful and peaceful now, no longer the cold and threatening darkness she had seen while dying in the void. Captain Walker joined her, carrying 2 cups of something that smelled strong and bitter. Coffee, he explained, offering her one. Human drink. Might be too strong for Kelthran taste, but it helps with thinking. Mira accepted the cup gratefully. The liquid was indeed bitter, but it warmed her from the inside and seemed to clear her thoughts. Captain Walker, I need to ask you something that's been bothering me. Go ahead. The Council believes your people chose isolation because you're too dangerous for civilized space. But that's not the real reason, is it? Walker smiled and activated a wall display. It showed a map of the galaxy with thousands of tiny red dots scattered throughout the dark spaces between star systems. Every red dot is a human ship. Patrol vessels, rescue ships, hospital ships. All of them working in the places where Council ships won't go. Mira stared at the display in amazement. There were so many dots. Hundreds of human ships spread across the galaxy like a vast network. I had no idea there were so many of you out here. Most people don't. We prefer it that way. Walker touched a control and the display zoomed in on different sectors. This ship here responded to a mining accident last month. Saved 200 Altarian workers. This one stopped a slave convoy 3 weeks ago. Freed 400 people from 12 different species. But why keep it secret? Walker's expression became serious. What happens when peaceful people know that violent people will always come to save them? Mira thought about it for a moment, then understood. They stop being careful. They take more risks because they know someone else will pay the price. Exactly. And worse than that, they start expecting it. Demanding it. Before long, the protectors aren't protectors anymore, they're rulers. And the people they were trying to help become subjects instead of allies. The observation lounge door opened and Dr. Cooper entered, followed by Tom and Dr. Mills. The young engineer looked much better after his treatment, his color healthy and his movement strong. Captain Walker, Tom said eagerly, Dr. Cooper was showing us the ship. This place is amazing. You have workshops that can build anything, laboratories better than our universities, and that medical bay could handle casualties from a dozen battles at once. All necessary, Walker replied simply. When you're operating in the dark spaces, you have to be self-sufficient. Can't call for supplies or reinforcements when the nearest friendly base is weeks away. Dr. Mills had been quiet since boarding the human ship, but now she spoke up. I've been thinking about what you said earlier. About violence not being evil if it's used to protect people. Back home, we're taught that violence is always wrong. And in Council space, that's probably true, Walker said. You have laws, police, courts, civilization. But out here, He gestured toward the window and the darkness beyond. Out here, the only law is what people are willing to enforce. And the only protection is what people are willing to fight for. The communication panel chimed with an incoming message. Captain Walker activated it, and Admiral Kent appeared on the screen. Myra's superior looked relieved but also confused. Captain Mira, we received your status report. You're safe and your ship is repaired. Yes, Admiral. Thanks to Captain Walker and his crew. Admiral Kent looked uncomfortable. And these humans, they helped you without asking for anything in return? They asked for nothing except the chance to make sure we got home safely, Mira replied. I see. The Admiral paused, clearly struggling with something. Captain Mira, when you return, the Council will want a full report. They'll want to know everything about human capabilities, their weapons, their intentions. Mira looked at Walker, who nodded slightly. He understood what she had to do. Admiral, I'll file a complete report. But I want to make a formal recommendation first. She took a deep breath. I recommend the Council reconsider our relationship with humanity. Not despite their capacity for violence, but because of their choice to use it only in service of those who need protection. Admiral Kentha's eyes widened. Captain, you're suggesting we ally ourselves with the Deathworlders? I'm suggesting we ally ourselves with people who risk their lives to save strangers, Mira replied firmly. People who could conquer star systems but choose instead to patrol the darkness so that researchers like us can go home to our families. After the call ended, Walker raised his coffee cup in a small salute. Thank you, Captain. Though I should warn you, the Council might not be ready to hear that message. Then I'll keep saying it until they are, Mira said. She looked out at the stars again, but now she saw them differently. The darkness between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of guardians watching and waiting. Captain Walker, can I ask you one more question? Of course. When you heard our distress call, did you hesitate? Even for a moment? We're strangers from a species that has avoided you for centuries. Walker smiled, and for a moment the warrior disappeared completely, replaced by something gentler. Captain Mira, there are a lot of things humans disagree about. Politics, religion, what constitutes good food. But there's one thing every human agrees on, no matter where they're from. What's that? When someone calls for help, you answer. Doesn't matter who they are or what they've done. Doesn't matter if they're grateful or if they understand. You answer the call because that's what makes you human. As the luminous hope crossed into Council space, Captain Mira finally understood what the word Deathworlder really meant. It wasn't about being too dangerous for civilization. It was about being dangerous enough to preserve it, and choosing to do so without asking for recognition or reward. The humans hadn't sent aid. They had sent something much more valuable, they had sent hope.